in which Samuel Knopp and Celie Montgomery were killed in a dorm room on the UCCS campus. Today we presented some evidence on that investigation to the judge for a probable cause determination. The judge did find probable cause and bound the case over for trial. The court also heard from the defense, and the case is now set for an arraignment. That arraignment is on October 25th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. At an arraignment setting, it's typical that a defendant will enter a formal plea. Typically that will be a not guilty plea, but it could be either a guilty or not guilty plea. If it's a not guilty plea, we have 6 months from that date in which to have a trial on the charges. So that will start the speedy trial clock. It's important to note that today's finding is merely a procedural step in the prosecution process. We obviously still have to abide by the rule of law, and that is that all defendants, regardless of charges or steps like this, are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that applies to this defendant as well. He has not been found guilty of any charges yet. This is, again, just a procedural step, and he is presumed innocent until we get to a jury finding at some point down the road. With that, I would be able to answer some very procedural questions. Obviously, we're not going to get into facts or anything beyond what occurred in the courtroom today. Obviously, everything that occurred in the courtroom today is open to the public, so we can talk about those things. But we do want to protect our prosecution effort in this case to make sure that we can receive and find justice for Samuel and Celie. So with that, any questions?
District Attorney Allen, what charges could you talk about potentially would he be facing? I know there was a lot of evidence that was admissible into, I guess, now the trial is going to be moving forward. Could you talk about those possible charges? What are you seeking?
Yeah, so we filed charges previously, and the defendant had notice of those charges. That is 2 counts of murder in the first degree with intent and after deliberation. Those are the charges that we presented evidence on today, and that's what the judge found probable cause to support to bind over for trial, and so that's where we are now.
And can you talk about the maximum penalties that those
Sure.
carry?
Yeah, those are Class 1 felony offenses, so those types of offenses carry life in prison without parole if convicted.
Mr. Allen, we saw
Yeah.
that Celie Montgomery's family was there in the courtroom.
Yes.
Have you talked with her family at all? Do they have any message that they've told you?
Yeah,
about this one?
I think that kind of stuff is better to save towards the end of this process. Obviously, every family member that's involved in a case like this is struggling with, the suddenness that their child essentially has been taken from them. I know that they're struggling with that, and you probably saw a little bit of that in the courtroom today. But beyond that, I would just want to protect their privacy, and then we can talk about those things when we get further down the road. Appreciate that. Any other questions?
Earlier today, I was kind of out in between going in live.
Sure.
But I did step in at a moment when I heard that there was some activity that happened in the El Paso County Jail. Is
Yeah.
that further evidence that you're going to be considering?
Yes.
Or-
Yeah, great question. So there's actually 2 cases that are pending right now. There's the one case that really is focusing on what happened on the UCCS campus back in February. And then the second case occurred in March at the Criminal Justice Center, the jail, essentially, where it's alleged that the defendant struck a jail deputy over some dispute. So we had to present evidence on that as well. It's a felony offense, and that was also bound over for trial. Again, he is still presumed innocent even on that because the finding here is just probable cause.
And is that trial date set for a different date other than October 25th?
So it's not trial yet. We're set for arraignment in October, and both of these cases are set for arraignment on that October 25th date. Great question, though. Anything else? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us here in the 11 Breaking News Center this evening. I'm Lauren Watson, your digital anchor here at KKTV 11 News. Today, the suspect in a UCCS shooting that occurred earlier this year and left 2 people dead appeared in court for the first time since being ruled competent. Preliminary hearing was held, and as you just heard from the district attorney, an arraignment has been set for late October. Our reporter Aaron Vitito has been in court for most of the day. He'll have more in just a few minutes here on 11 News at 5:30, and we'll have some more on this tonight on 11 News at 10. But until then, I'm going to leave you with this live look from outside of the El Paso County Courthouse. Thanks for joining us.